only with where the church is and where needs are, and I think about those things constantly and bounce those ideas off elders and Craig and others and just individuals along the way. And you may not know it, but you give me input from time to time. Not only just the little notes that come across on the note cards, and occasionally I get some comical and some rather serious requests on things, and some of those eventually I get to address, depending on the timing of all of those. But it's just by conversation, little things that you say occasionally stick in my mind. I think I've got to talk about that sometime. But right now, at where we are at this time of the year, it's a very emotional time. And it's a time where a lot of people are very going around with a big smile on their face and looking very cheerful. But on the inside, not everybody's that way. There's bottled up emotions and struggles and difficulties going on, and those visits to the relatives don't always pan out the way you'd like them to. And some people, deal with all that and just kind of hold it inside. And because of that and who we are, we tend to feel like we're a failure in some aspects. And that can eventually creep into not only our daily life, but everything else out there, and especially our Christian life. And who we are as individuals and as Christians and brothers and sisters in Christ in this family is extremely important to one another. And I believe wholeheartedly that none of you are failures. Some of you might, inside your hearts, think that. And you might be surprised sometimes with individuals that I get to talk to, or others might talk to, that feel that about themselves, because on the outside it looks like they're doing just a phenomenal job. And they are. But on the inside they've got a lot of doubt. So I want to talk about overcoming the fear of failure and connect that obviously to some scripture. And what I want to do in the process is define the idea of failure, list some characters who had to deal with failure. I'll list some things that looked like failures and turned out not to be, how it got turned around, and then talk about some passages that very well fit in that. So, running the control tonight, Parker's got me up here, which is dangerous in itself. Overcoming the fear of failure. And it talks about this failure itself, kind of defining it from some little Google search that I did earlier. It's a significant threat to us, to who we are as human beings, and it can actually be a threat to our health, for that matter, too. And so that feeling of being a loser can really hold us back from being successful, and we don't want that. So I'm going to talk about, you might think you're a failure, but so do these people in some aspect. And the first person I want to list here is, come on, there we go, Ebenezer Scrooge. You may not recognize this picture. Actually, this isn't Ebenezer Scrooge. This is Thomas Edison. But he looked like that guy in the Christmas thing by Dickens, and so I thought I'd start out like that. And I know you recognize the name. You've heard his name before, and you understand that that's the guy that invented the electric iron. No, it was the light bulb. That's what it was. I'm just kidding. I knew that. But did you know that not only did he invent the light bulb, that he was interviewed along in the process of time as he was talking about doing it, because he had other inventions of things that he had done, and some successful. And sometime after not getting the light bulb that he wanted, over 9,000 times he was interviewed, and some of the people said, don't you think that you're kind of like a failure? I mean, look at 9,000 times. He said, no, not at all. He said, I've just known for sure now, I've established the fact there are 9,000 plus ways that the light bulb won't work. He said, I just got to figure out, besides that, what does work. And so he looked at what we would call failure, 9,000 plus failures. It was actually over 10,000 times before he actually came down with the incandescent light that worked and stayed burning and that didn't just burn out. And that you may even have heard also. Pulling this off the internet, which we trust completely, always to be truthful and honest, but anyway, joking over there, it says about him that this same person was thought of by some of his teachers to be, quote, too stupid to learn anything. This is a guy who turned around and had over 1,000 patents on the U.S. patent scale, plus some in the United States, or in Canada rather, and the United Kingdom. But he refused to give up. Another individual, you might not recognize his name or his picture, but you would recognize his name because you see it out there on the road every day. Henry Ford. He's known because of the Ford Motor Company that he was very successful at producing, but you may not have known that he failed in 2 other operations prior to that, abruptly resulting in bankruptcies prior to launching Ford Motor Company that eventually got off the ground and started working. Henry Ford. You know, if you have the feeling that you fail at one thing and then you fail again at the second thing, you think, I think I'll try something else. But these 2 men didn't. Now, one very familiar face that you probably recognize, so I just went ahead and put his name up there, Colonel Sanders. Now, this is not the imitation one that you see on the commercials lately. This is the real guy who had failed quite often in earlier years in trying to do different things. And he was very firm that his recipe for chicken was good, but he never got anywhere with it. And at age 62, with a $105 Social Security check in hand, he began going restaurant to restaurant to restaurant, pitching this recipe, being successful. 1,009 people he talked to before he finally reached somebody that agreed to try it at 62 with $105 in his pocket. You see, what I'm showing you here are things that you know by name that haven't been failures, but you didn't know what it took to get to where they're at. And one face that you'll surely recognize in addition, that's Bill Gates. You know, what a success. You see his picture around the world, matter of fact. Probably known better than any of these other characters that we had seen previously. What's the name of Bill Gates, his picture? But when he first started one of his businesses called, let me look at here, Data Design, what a name, huh? It failed along with Paul Allen, who was his co-worker with this. The program, the designs, everything was a complete failure in the process. It took him a few years before he finally developed the concept of what we know as Microsoft. Now that sounds like the prestigious name that we recognize, but it probably isn't any other any more fancy than Data, except that Data didn't work, you see. But Microsoft rings a successful name because of Bill Gates, you see, not giving up. Now another character that maybe some of you younger people may or may not recognize, he goes back in time, Walt Disney. Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Productions, etc. Back in my days of growing up, very wholesome man, creating a lot of really beautiful, family-oriented movies, etc. Quite successful, but he was first fired from a newspaper that he started working with. They told him that he lacked creativity. Can you imagine? Then he decided he would do an animation company, and he called it Laugh-O-Gram Films. Forced to close because it was a failure also. Desperate and out of money, he still set out toward Hollywood with a vision in mind and a dream that he had something worth sharing, and eventually became Walt Disney of Disney World. You recognize that group of men, at least most of you will. You younger people may or may not. The Beatles. They first tried cutting a record company with Decca Records. Told them that their music was out of time, not useful anymore, nobody cared about it. And they wouldn't sign them up. Failure for them, obviously, for what they became in a success. One of my favorite guys is this guy named Michael. Michael was cut from his basketball team in high school. Didn't do that well. Poor Michael. We felt sorry for him until later on he decided he'd play in the NBA. Michael Jordan is the Michael that was cut. Can you imagine the coach in the high school basketball team that later watched him grow in his career, thinking, how could I have missed a star like this? You got to stop and think, was he that good in high school? or was it his decision because he was cut that he's going to make himself better? But somewhere in the process, there was an excellence that he pursued and he would not give up. Watching one game some years ago, while he had the flu, playing in the games, and in between he'd have breaks and he'd cover himself up and you'd see the sweat pouring off of him because of the flu that he had, coughing and hacking, and then it was time and he'd jump back out and he'd do the most amazing shots ever and think, how on earth does he even walk? And the skill and the excellence that just exuded from this guy. Another character that you might recognize here, Winston Churchill, quite a famous statesman, especially during World War II, and for Britain, as he led them through a tremendous crisis time when Germany was bombing them during World War II. And one of the most powerful speeches he had, I think it was 7 words long. Never, 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 never give up. Became so powerful to him. But did you know that he flunked 6th grade when he was in school? But out of all of those things that we look at in these characters and this list of people here, let's go to the next one. Have a list. You've got inventors and engineers and songwriters and musicians and dreamers and sportsmen and statesmen and all of these things. And the thing that they had in common was not that they didn't fail, but when they failed, they didn't give up. A couple things to look at that are kind of interesting. The Post-it note. How many of y'all have never seen a Post-it note in your entire life? That's kind of what I thought. You know what a Post-it note is? The guy that invented the Post-it note was trying to create a super glue. And the story comes out when I read back some time ago that he tried to stick it on his piece of paper and he'd let it go for a while and it came right off. And so he'd write the formula on it and he'd stick it up there. Well, that one didn't work. And he'd try another formula and it didn't work. And finally he found himself with stick-it notes all over his laboratory. And he thought, oh, we can move these things around. There's a need for that. So he dropped the idea of the super glue and he started Post-it notes. Sometimes when we pursue one thing, it doesn't exactly work out, but there's something else in line if we'll open our eyes and see what's going on. By the way, his name was Dr. Spencer Silver. He was a chemist with 3M Company. And in 1968 is when he did all that process. WD-40. First discovered that when I was in Vietnam in 1971. We're using those to spray down our M16s and keep them lubricated. Quite a neat invention. And why they don't call it WD-39 or WD-1? Because he went through 39 different tries before he finally got a successful one that worked. WD-40. Now here's a funny one here. Pacemaker. The pacemaker originally was the size of a television. You go, what? But it wasn't made as a pacemaker at that time. But Wilson Greatbach made a mistake as he was working through this, and he accidentally stuck a wrong size resistor in the electronics of it. And when he plugged it into the circuit, he noticed the sound resembled a heartbeat. And he thought about that for a while. And he shifted what he was working on to something different. And eventually, obviously, miniaturized it. And now it's saving people's lives. A pacemaker. Here's one you've probably never seen before. Oh yeah, I guess you have. Bubble wrap. How many don't get something wrapped in bubble wrap from some electronics store or Amazon or where else? Engineers Mark, if I can pronounce this right, Chavanis and Al Fielding created bubble wrap in 1960. It was an attempt to create a trendy, textured wallpaper. Failed. After that, they decided they'd use it on housing insulation. It failed. Eventually, IBM bought it up at a very cheap price and started wrapping their computers in it when they would ship them out in the early days of time. And now we all know about bubble wrap. I don't know much about hockey, but I do know about this guy here. I've always admired his motto. Canadian professional ice hockey player, former head coach, played for about 20 different years, nicknamed the Great One, as far as hockey is concerned, still holds the record for the number of goals and the number of assists that he has done. His statement that rings with me is you miss 100% of the shots you never make. That was his goal. Now, it doesn't always look that good. I think there's a few teeth missing, these hockey players and how things are. But as you're looking at this whole process, we ask ourselves the question, what if I fail? As we look at something. What if I want to talk to this person about the gospel, what if it doesn't? What if I fail? Or what if I fail at this or that? And we're looking at the wrong direction here, because the question really should be more like, when I fail, will I give up? Or will I get up, you see? Because at every attempt we make, good 99% of the time we're going to fail in one way or another. I'm watching a little 2-year-old right now around my house. And every step of the way as he's going up and down these steps, he's going to fall one of these times, but he's managing it. And he keeps at it. He stumbled a few times, and there was a loud crash yesterday morning at our house. And we looked at the bottom of the steps, and it was one of these little plastic tricycles. It was at the bottom, and he was kind of suffering halfway in the middle of the stairs. And we don't know what he did, but he was nervous about what happened. And I think he was trying to get the tricycle down the steps. Okay, 11 steps. And he can't hardly manage them himself. But he's not giving up. He is going to go up and down those steps. And he'll start running up and down the steps. The idea is not what happens, but will he get up and keep at it? You bet he will. We've all been through that process as far as learning to walk and learning to run and the things that we do. But somewhere in our mind, we develop this barrier, well, I don't think I can do this. And as soon as we tell ourselves, I can't, we won't. But the question is not what if I fail. But the question is, okay, when I fail, what do I need to do next? How I'm going to maneuver around that and how I'm going to be successful. Passage here that to me is extremely important, 1 Timothy 6. I want you to focus on 2 words. The word pursue, second line, last word. This is what we ought to be driving toward. And then there's a list of things. Pursue this. It's to say, it's not an easy thing to attain. So you're going to really have to put out some effort. Pursue these things. And then the listing of things that make us who we are as a Christian. And in that process is that concept of steadfastness. Or another translation would say perseverance. It's the not giving upness that's there that makes us who we are. A prize fighter becomes a successful prize fighter not because he gets knocked down, but because when he gets knocked down, he keeps getting up. And we stay steadfast at our Christian life, at our pursuit to try to be something better, at our pursuit to grow, at our pursuit to reaching out. We make a difference. Yeah, we'll fail. We'll fail in tripping over our tongues. How do you think, every preacher becomes a little bit better in this process of time? Because he keeps going at it. And so as we talk to people about Christ, we'll make mistakes. We'll wish afterwards, I wish I'd said this and that or whatever, but then you go at it again. And you perfect yourself in this pursuit. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Paul says, be ye steadfast. Other translation says unmovable. New King James, immovable. Always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your work in the Lord is not in vain. It's just not. Any effort that you exert, even if you fall, is not in vain. As we look at who we are, and the emotions work us over as Christians, and Satan, he's He's mixing in that. And he's doing everything that he can in this formula inside your mind to defeat you, to cause you to think that you're not worthy, that you're not able. And in this whole process, he's trying to defeat us. But we have this other strength behind us. It's not us alone. And so as Isaiah has inspired God to talk to all of us, he talks about those who wait on the Lord. That is, our hope is in the Lord. We get our strength renewed. We're able to do things that maybe other people can't or won't try to do because God's with us in this process. So here we are, what I call Thanksgiving Sunday night. It's after all the turkey, after the celebration, after the parties, maybe all of them not gone quite as good, and after we're looking toward Christmas and thinking ahead, and by the way, get to working on those New Year goals and don't let them defeat you. And we look at who we are and we realize, don't think of yourself as a failure. And as we're looking toward this year that's coming up, keep on thinking about what you can do and the great hurdles that you can overcome. And look not only at this list of people and inventions and stuff, but especially the numerous passages that show us true human beings, not superhumans like Superman and Spider-Man and all that, but just human beings that didn't give up, that served God in spite of all the difficulties they had, and became great men of God and women of God because they didn't quit and they stayed with it. This is our challenge to become something of what God wants us to be during this holiday season, during times when other people are struggling, and looking ahead for the year on what we can be if we'll recognize we're not losers, we're not failures, that God enables us every day and strengthens us and takes care of us and guides us and leads us. So the only way you can fail when you get down to it is if you decide you're failing and you quit. So don't quit. Stay with it. And maybe tonight you're struggling with something. Boy, this is the group that understands, because we all have our struggles. If you need a prayer, if you need to respond to the gospel invitation, we understand what failure is about, don't we? We'll stand with you, we'll pray for you, and we'll walk with you as we do for each other. Keep in the process. But if you need to come forward tonight for any need, come while we stand and sing.